Buffalo Bills take down the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs lose for the first time this season. Buffalo defends home field, and you know this one had to feel good for Buffalo. I mean, Amari Cooper, who is new with the Buffalo Bills, I don't know if you caught this. After the game, he kind of smiled, and he was like, that's the first time I've felt joy after a win in a long time, because these players, yeah, they're competitive. Yeah, they want to win, but sometimes it's sort of just about, doing your job the way that you need to, and you get a little bit reserved. And obviously things are going really well in Buffalo, and he's happy in Buffalo to be able to say something like that and feel those emotions. Let's look at the top 5 graded players from the Buffalo Bills in this game in their win. At the top spot, we have wide receiver Khalil Shakir with an 81.1 overall grade. On the other side of things, on the defensive side of the ball, edge rusher Greg Rousseau comes in at number 2 with a 79.9. Offensive tackle Deion Dawkins with a 77.4. And then back-to-back wide receivers here. Curtis Samuel, who had a really good game with a 77.0. And then wide receiver Amari Cooper there. He is rounding things out at number 5 with a 75.6. Josh Allen in this game, 90.2 overall grade. On Kansas City's side of things, Creed Humphrey, as he often is in these top 5s, he's at the top of the list with an 85.9 overall grade in this game. Cornerback Trent McDuffie with an 80.9, wide receiver Mecole Hardman with a 73.8, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins a 73.6, and then edge rusher Michael Dana with a 73.1. Patrick Mahomes in this game a 74.0. Dalton, as I often do, I'll ask you to kick it off with the stat that told the story. What was it here?
So you know what I like about these big games is what usually happens is everything you've studied about the two teams all comes to the forefront at some point throughout the game, right? And there's so many different things to pick from. Even the guys in that graphic, right? Khalil Shakir getting it done against man coverage, and Greg Rousseau dominating lately, and Josh Allen just being Josh Allen. But I think the biggest thing that I want to go back to is something I talked about on the show last week when they beat the Colts. The Bills play such clean football. You take out the 2 kneel downs at the end, only 3 negative plays. 3 plays all night that lost yardage on offense. And the Chiefs only had 3 negative plays as well. So I told you last week the Bills are a lot more like the Chiefs than we think, right? Yep. They don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. They don't get as vertical anymore. And that's okay. You can still win without doing that. And even then, they pick their shots, right? So, I think this offense, how you get like boxers early in their career. Think about Mike Tyson from the 80s, certainly not from this weekend. How it was kind of swinging wildly, and they want to get the knockouts and rack up knockouts early in their career.
Right.
And that was Josh Allen, right? It was like kind of the Brett Favre thing where it's all or nothing. And now what this Bills offense does is they kind of win with jabs, right? And then they decide to throw their haymaker when it's actually there. And he still had 5 big-time throws in this game, even though there was only 1 touchdown pass, and then he obviously had the big run at the end. But they now pick their spots to make big plays, right? If they get one-on-one on the outside, I think, was it Amari Cooper with the early catch that against man-to-man coverage? Mm-hmm. That's when they'll take their shots, but they're not forcing it at all. They don't make negative plays. They won the turnover battle 2-1 in this game. That one interception near the end of the second quarter, that was really their only big mistake on offense the whole night. They didn't allow any sacks. And then even on defense, they only allowed 4 total explosive plays to the Chiefs and just 1 in the first 3 quarters, and they only missed 2 tackles all night. They played, and the Chiefs played a relatively clean football game too, even though, Mahomes had the early interception that spotted the Bills 6 points. But you know how the Chiefs are. They don't screw things up either. But the Bills' ability to stay out of almost any negatives throughout this entire game, they played an even cleaner game than the Chiefs played with the added element of Josh Allen's explosiveness. And it's just a really good combination they're working with. Some weeks they run the ball, some weeks it's conservative in the passing game, some weeks it's big-time throws, and then some games like this you just need Josh Allen to go out and be Josh Allen. There's going to be days like this, but it's better that they don't have to ask him to do it every week, because now you get to games like this and he can do it and you feel good about it.
Well, I mean, it feels like they do ask him to do this every week, and it's an offense that works. Like you were kind of saying, and I think the spirit of the way that you were saying it is you don't want to put all of this on Josh Allen's plate every single week, but it feels like the Bills do, and it's not like it's getting overwhelming for him. Josh Allen had 317 of the team's total 366 yards. I mean, he is this team. They remain balanced through him. They're a great passing team and a great running team, again, through him. He led the team in rushing in this game with 55 yards, and so he was able to give them a boost there because it felt like they weren't getting a ton from the rushing game, at least from an efficiency standpoint. But there's Josh Allen right there to be able to pick them up. And I agree with you. I think that my call-out also would have been how cleanly this offense played, the limiting of negative plays. I thought that was a great call-out by you last week to say, hey, the Buffalo Bills, we think about them as this explosive offense. We think about them as a potential feast or famine team, but in reality, this is one of the most efficient offenses that we have in the NFL. And it's not often we get explosive and efficient. Normally you pick one or the other, but Josh Allen's such a special quarterback, and they're very clearly become comfortable with letting him just rule the entire offense. And I think a lot of people looked at that, myself included. When I picked the Bills to really take a step back this year, it was under that premise. It was under so much is going to be on Josh Allen's plate. How do I tell myself that it's going to work out for them every single week? Well, now the proof is in the pudding. Now the proof is there. We're 11 weeks into the season, and it works because he's that good, and that's why you're talking about him as an MVP candidate. So I agree with you. I think the stat that told the story in two very evenly matched teams that know each other very well. It's not just the fact that we're 11 weeks into the season and we sort of know all these teams' tendencies. These two teams know how they've played each other a lot over the last 4 to 5 years. So that also compounds and goes into it. So Allen playing the way that he has, being able to take everything on his plate and just continue to eat, full pun intended, has been awesome to watch for the Bills. And I think that they deserve to feel the feelings of this win, because it feels like they have been a Super Bowl caliber team that has just come up short against a Chiefs dynasty, specifically over the last 3 years. And so they definitely deserve to feel some joy in this one, not only for how they've been playing this season, but sort of over those last 3 or 4 years. What's your most impressive or most disappointing in this game?
It's Josh Allen. That's the most impressive part to me, because even with the 5 big-time throws and everything he does, and this was a game where he kind of had to be Superman, right? They didn't run the ball with James Cook a whole lot. He had an early touchdown, but when you talk about somehow this guy has 5 big-time throws and yet an average depth of target of only 6.8 yards, the conservative part of his game has gotten so much better. You mentioned it, the efficient part of his game has gotten so much better, taking the throws given to you. I told you the way he sees coverages in this game. When he saw zone coverage, he threw it underneath and he let his weapons work after the catch. And when he saw man coverage, he threw it over the top. And you know what I love about, you mentioned these two teams know each other so well. They play each other twice a year now. It's like they're in the same friggin' division, right? Mm-hmm. There was so many adjustments in this game. And that very last play, and Allen actually mentioned this after the game. They asked him, like, what did you see on that last play? What had to happen for you to have that run? And he goes, listen, they showed me cover 1 like they showed me a lot of this game. And he's absolutely right. They showed 1, they dropped into 3, different look. The Bills ran a just full tilt mesh, expecting man coverage, didn't get it. And at that point, he's just like, shit, there's nothing left for me to do. Nobody's open. I can't run. I can't throw to anybody in this defense, right? And they did fool him, and he found a way to make a play anyway, probably expecting just to get to the chains and not break 3 tackles and get the touchdown, or
right.
Maybe, with him, anything's possible. But it's that sort of thing with Allen that I know everybody thinks about, well, sometimes he's just reckless and he runs. No, he had to take off and run there because the coverage flipped on him and nobody was open, and it really was his last option. He wants to be a pass-first quarterback, but the adjustments from what you saw from the Chiefs on defense and what the Bills were expecting and what they'd seen most of the day, and then what he saw post-snap and having to adjust to it and making the biggest play maybe of their season, because you also have the tiebreaker now over them if you tie with them at the end of it for the 1 seed and maybe
right.
Playing in Buffalo and bye week and all that stuff. It just, again, shows me Josh Allen's football IQ is off the charts, all right? He's been in the league, 7 years now already? I think we forget this isn't a young guy anymore. I mean, he's still in his late 20s, but he has seen so much football and so much postseason football and so much high-level football from a defense like Steve Spagnuolo's that those are the adjustments he can make on the fly. So that run, it wasn't a draw. It wasn't anything by design. It was an adjustment he made on the fly from the coverage that he saw, knowing the Chiefs actually with the play call won the battle, but Allen's so good that he can break through that.
Special player, man. He really is. My most impressive in this game was Curtis Samuel. We were watching the game, and there were a couple of Curtis Samuel catches where I'm looking around at you guys in the office, and I'm like, this dude's got juice. This dude's turning back the clock. I haven't seen Curtis Samuel run like this in a long time. Maybe since the Carolina days, maybe since the Ohio State days. I feel like I haven't seen Curtis Samuel run the way that he did this past week. And so when you look at what Samuel did, what Khalil Shakir did, you throw in Amari Cooper, obviously, now in this lineup after the trade. Dawson Knox, no Dalton Kincaid in this one, but I loved how diverse their passing attack was and how different types of skill sets they have now. Shakir, he's sort of become their do-it-all wide receiver. Obviously, he's not going to be a big-time burner deep down the field, but short and intermediate, very clearly Khalil Shakir can produce for you. You've got Curtis Samuel, who again gives you that extra juice. I thought he played great this past weekend. Big yards after the catch guy. Amari Cooper, that veteran route runner. If you're ever seeing man coverage, you know that he's got the ability to break off and find space and get that throwing window open. Then of course you've got the tight ends, who anytime you have linebackers or safeties who can't match up against you, in that week, it's going to be a good matchup for you to be able to exploit. So that's not even talking about the running backs out of the backfield that he has the option to throw the ball to. The Bills just seem like such a complete football team. And again, I think that when you throw, I didn't even mention Keon Coleman's name. Like, Keon Coleman obviously is in there as well when he is healthy. So this feels like, I didn't feel this way going into the season, but the Bills, Matt Milano's coming back, right, at some point in time. This feels like a team that absolutely has the caliber of talent to make a deep postseason run and to be one of those teams at the very end, and who knows, maybe even finally break through and get to play in that Super Bowl. That's a big shock to me because I thought it was going to be a step-back season for the Bills, but hats off to Sean McDermott and how the rest of this coaching staff and team have come together this year, because they are playing some very, very good ball right now, 11 weeks into the season. My most disappointing guy on the Chiefs side of things who got picked on quite a bit, cornerback Najee Johnson, 10 targets against him, 7 catches allowed, 78 receiving yards, a touchdown, a 50.1 coverage grade. And this is a topic for the Chiefs that when we were close to the trade deadline, it's like, all right, well, the Chiefs, they've made a couple of moves so far, but are they still, going to be active to go out and get a corner? And, Jalen Watson now out probably for the season. You're basically just depending on the guys that you have in the building now. And so Najee Johnson having to step up and get into that lineup, to me, when I went back and I watched the 10 targets against him, he just doesn't look really confident out there right now. He's leaving a lot of space between him and the wide receivers because he doesn't want to get beat over the top. And that space, wide receivers are seeing that. They're eating that up. They're making their cuts and their breaks on the route appropriately, and they're keeping that throwing window open. So for Johnson, he's got to gain more confidence as the rest of the year goes on, especially if he's going to maintain that starting spot, because it was not good enough, and it was obviously an area that the Bills are comfortable picking on him. But most disappointing for you in this one.
Look, the Chiefs are not going to win a whole lot of games when Travis Kelce has 4 targets, 2 catches, and 8 yards. And a theme in their last few weeks had been, okay, he was getting hot, and they were getting him a lot of early targets in games. His last 3 games before this, Kelce had 39 targets. They were featuring him early, and then it was working off of him later in the game. The problem in this game was, and I thought the Bills did a really nice job adjusting to it on defense. They were leaning his way early. They just were getting 2 sets of eyes on Kelce at all times early, so he wouldn't get in that rhythm, and then Mahomes wouldn't get in that rhythm and making defenses react up to Kelce kind of as a decoy later in the game, because that's what had been happening. They blanketed Kelce early. Mahomes, especially, you could see it on that first interception. Noah Gray was wide open if he would have just worked off from Kelce to Gray about a half second sooner. Pressure got there, overthrew Gray, interception. But that's where he's looking early in these games right now, and the Bills shut it down early, and then Kelce just wasn't a factor the rest of the game. They're not going to win a whole lot of playoff games if Kelce has 2 catches for 8 yards. That's going to be a problem.
It's not quite like the Eagles were in, what was it, last year? Was it last year that the Eagles started 10-0, and it was like, okay, they were this undefeated team. They were
10-1 maybe,
something like that. Their record was obviously incredible, but you watch this Eagles team and you were like, I don't feel super confident in where this team is right now. We're not there with the Chiefs, and with Patrick Mahomes, I don't think we're going to get there. So I don't want people to think that I'm saying that it's identical to what the Eagles were last year. But in my opinion, the Chiefs aren't as, how should I say this, well-rounded as their record.
The flaws.
I don't want to say they're not. I don't want to say they're not as good as their record, because I think that's not fair either. Because when you have Patrick Mahomes, the record speaks for itself.
But the flaws are right in front of us.
Yes. It's not like people were posting the graphics with the stats of like Tom Brady 10 games through the undefeated season with the Patriots versus Patrick Mahomes. They're not as imposing as that Patriots team that almost went undefeated back in, what was that, 2007?
Yes.
2007. They're not quite that team, but they're also not as fraudulent as we felt like the Eagles were last year.
They're still going to win 13, 14 games.
Yes. They're still going to be in contention for the number 1 seed. But as we saw this past week, and as we have seen before, they are vulnerable. They are more of a vulnerable team than I think they have been over the last couple of years with them winning the Super Bowl. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.